morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to REI Talk. It's our bi-monthly thought leadership webinar brought to you by a real estate investor. My name is Neil Peterson. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of Real Estate Investor, and we've been serving the South African residential and commercial real estate industry for over 14 years now through our digital magazine, our live and virtual events, webinars, masterclasses, online content, videos, podcasts, and we keep the investor up to date with the latest inside information, education, investment opportunities, and innovations for newbie and savvy property investors, whether you're also a home buyer, a landlord, a developer, and also for you, the property professional and the practitioners in the industry. And today, I'm really excited and honored to be your host and moderator for this webinar today. Our topic for today is the future of the office and how semigration is fueling the rise of more hybrid office models. And we have a great panel lineup today who I will introduce to you very shortly. As I said, it's the future of the office and how semigration is fueling the rise of hybrid office model. And we've seen as a result of COVID-19 and lockdown, businesses across the world are currently engaging in the largest remote work experiment to date. And over the last year, entrepreneurs and business owners have been forced to reassess the way they carry out their everyday operations. And many have realized the massive opportunity that virtual and flexible solutions present. So with the extreme success that remote working saw last year, in particular in hard lockdown, one question is constantly looming: what does the future of the office look like? And also the trend of semigration. So we've seen that people are moving out of densely populated major cities in favor of either working from home or finding alternative office accommodation outside of central business district. The semigration trend, the so-called Zoom towns, and we've got two of our guests from those Zoom towns, and we're happy to hear what's actually happening there as a result of remote working. It's also fueling demand in the new hybrid co-working and flexible workspace revolution. So this has accelerated new opportunities for investment in this category. So we've seen that flexible office franchise ventures are proving to be more sustainable than traditional office, regardless of economic conditions. So as Michael Dell says, he says, technology now allows people to connect anytime, anywhere to anyone in the world from almost any device. And this is dramatically changing the way people work, facilitating 24/7 collaboration with colleagues who are dispersed across time zones, cities, countries, and continents. So we set up for an absolute great discussion. We have a jam-packed webinar today. We've got a stellar lineup of panelists. We've got our thought leaders, innovators, and experts in real estate with us today. So without further ado, ask our panelists to introduce us. So Dr. Marco Cagnano, could you please introduce yourself? I hope I got that pronunciation right there, Marco.
Not too bad, not the worst I've heard either. Yeah, thanks very much. So Marco Cagnano here. Thank you very much for having me. I am the real estate sector leader for Deloitte for Africa, and also the smart real estate leader for Deloitte Consulting. So Deloitte actually has two arms to it. There's the audit arm, which many of you might be aware of. But interestingly, Deloitte is also the largest management consultant company in the world. We've got about 350,000 employees spread across every country in the world, offering digital and transformation solutions to businesses and helping really bring businesses to the cutting edge. So my role with Deloitte is focused on the future of the built environment. It's understanding what role the evolution through technology, through data centricity, through platform strategy, and evolving business models, what role that would have on how we conceptualize and think about value through real estate, and what technology actually means to the changing experience of these spaces. Prior to joining Deloitte, I was a practicing professional architect for about 15 years, worked in pretty much every sector. So I've understood the process of cradle to grave design to construction to operations of buildings. I'm also director of the Green Building Council of South Africa with a passion for sustainability. And the doctor on my name is because I've completed a doctorate in smart and sustainable buildings and cities for the information age. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. It's great having you, Marco. And thanks for that intro. It's a real pleasure having you on the panel. All right, so our next guest is Alan from the Vestaisen. Alan, do you want to introduce yourself and where you fit in?
Hi there, Neil, and hi to everyone watching today. Thanks for having us on board as well. My name's Alan van der Vestaisen. I represent a company called IWG, the International Workplace Group, better known in South Africa as Regis and Spaces, and we focus primarily on flexible co-working office solutions in all locations, metro, non-metro, suburban locations around the world. We have 3,500 centers globally, and in South Africa, we're sitting on 56, with quite an aggressive target to double that footprint over the next 3 to 5 years. And that's really going to be driven through a channel that's recently been launched with IWG is bringing on franchise partners. So people who have local area knowledge, people who are the local heroes in the areas where Hein and Peter are from, so George, Plettenberg Bay, the suburban locations, and taking flexible working to the communities as opposed to sort of focusing in the metro areas where we had been prior to 2020. Very interested to hear what the others have to say and very excited to be part of the panel.
Alan, it's great having you on board, and we look forward to this enthralling discussion. We've got Peter Jordan and Hein Pretorius. They're from the Zoom towns. So Peter, tell us, introduce yourself and tell us about where you are and what your business is out that side of the world.
Thank you, Neil, and the team for the opportunity to be part of this discussion. My name is Peter Jordan. I am the principal owner together with my wife, Ray, at Steve George. We joined the real estate business in 1998. Together with other businesses, we operated in the Pretoria area. And in 2004, we migrated to George for a better lifestyle where we could raise our children in a safe environment. So we were some of the early semi-migrators to the area. And in 2012, we purchased the Steve George license and are actively involved with our agents in the area. We are one of the leading agencies in the George areas in terms of sales and rentals, covering residential, commercial, and agri market. So yeah, since I think over the last 15 years, we've seen George grown from a small retirement town to actually one of the expanding business hubs in the Garden Route. And we've experienced the semigration to the area firsthand there. Great.
Thank you, Peter. That's wonderful. I really look forward to hear what's actually going on the ground. And, you know, we specifically got the agents who are really moving and shaking in that area on the ground because we wanted to hear it from you firsthand. And without further ado, we've got Hein Pretorius. Hein is sitting in Plettenberg Bay. As you can see, he's got a beautiful sea view behind him over there. So we don't know if he's really working. So Hein, please introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Thank you, Neil. Yes, my name is Hein Pretorius. I'm the principal and co-owner of Sotheby's International Realty, Plettenberg Bay. I've been in the real estate industry in Plet since, 25 years. This is my office, and I'm very grateful to be able to work from it. Yeah, it's been an interesting ride the last 12 months, and it wasn't at all what we expected. But we're very grateful, and yeah, thank you for giving me the opportunity to be part of the panel.
Wonderful, thanks, Hein. It's great having you on board. Okay, so let's get into Q&A session. I'm going to ask Marco to kick off the discussion. So Marco, I mean, you've got more than 15 years experience, and I mean, you're a leader in consulting and project delivery. I mean, you said to us right at the beginning in the built environment, but specifically commercial, resi, retail, urban design, amongst a lot of others, specifically on architecture, as you mentioned, smart building design, sustainable development. So with the whole COVID and, lockdown, what does, in your opinion, what is the future of the office environment look like for you? How do you think that is currently looking? I mean, well, we kind of know what it is. It's not in a good space, but what do you believe? What is the future of that environment looking like for you?
Thanks very much, Neil. So what's interesting is, and you might hear this a lot, that COVID didn't really reinvent anything. All it did was it brought the future to us faster. And for many years, we've been looking at the changing nature of real estate and the office in particular as being the most susceptible and vulnerable to disruption, which COVID is now proven to be true. The fact of the matter is that in a world of connectivity, the value proposition behind a space is fundamentally being turned on its head. It has been for some time, and now more so than ever. The office is an interesting concept because the office is also synonymous with the workplace. But the workplace is now no longer just fixated on being situated in one specific location. In actual fact, the rise of digital platforms, the rise of technologies, and the rise of data centricity has meant that the age-old motto of real estate has fundamentally changed as well. It used to be location, 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 which effectively meant if you had the right building in the right place, that would effectively mean build it and they will come. You know, it's about an address. In actual fact, now the motto is location, insights, experience, because it's not about just having a space. It's about what the space can do for you as an individual and as a business. So when we think about the office, we need to be very mindful of the fact that businesses now need to ask themselves the fundamental question: why do I need an office in the first place? What is it doing for me that's actually adding value to my bottom line, to my operations? So the office is now not just a space to work, but now is a place to work better. And the difference between space and place is very important, because space just denotes four walls and a roof, keeps the elements out, and come in and do what it is that you need to do. But a place is a space that enables. It's an environment that actually connects and supports our activities. So when considering what the office needs to be, effectively what we're saying is the office needs to be another member of the team. It needs to be a place that augments my experience, that gives me access to information, services, other people, that allows me to program my day more effectively and effectively fulfills a new value proposition. So it is a new way of thinking about space, not as a place to work, but space as a service. And now is a way that also enables new ways of, and we can get into this a little bit later, new ways for us to actually monetize that experience as well, for those of us that actually have a vested interest in space as a commodity of value. So this also brings us to the idea of the virtual office, in that the office can be anywhere. It's either at home, it's at the office, it's the coffee shop, all the spaces in between. And we've seen some interesting trends also emerge around the world, whereby businesses that had previously focused their attention on creating a single environment where everybody could congregate are now looking towards what we call hub and spoke models, where the hub is effectively a place of centralized excellence and brand identity, but then pushing small little satellite offices to where the employees are located. Because, of course, we want to be able to allow for the disaggregated reality that we find ourselves now in as businesses. But the reason that that's important, and we'll get to, I think, hopefully a little bit later, is that the office still has an intrinsic value in that it offers employees and businesses the ability to control and calibrate the quality of experience in order to get the best out of their employees. At my home, I am now invisible to my employer. They have no idea the quality of space I've created for myself. There's no way of knowing whether or not I have a productive environment. And this is the reality that most employees or employers are facing. So the office still has an important value proposition to be made, in that it provides predictability, it provides certainty over the quality environment, because if my quality of environment is reduced, then my output is reduced as well, and that has a very real impact on businesses. So that perfect balancing act is now something that is required to be found, and is answered by understanding what work happens where, and then tailoring these environments to be supportive of that work. So every business needs to be quite deliberate about how to formulate that framework. And landlords of today now need to be quite deliberate in helping those businesses answer those questions. So now no longer are we landlords, we are partners in our tenants' success.
Okay, I think that's a wonderful, you set the scene very nicely there, Marco. And so obviously that opens the discussion, I think, very nicely to you, Alan, because and it's a very interesting way of looking at it, and I like that approach. So Alan, you specifically in the co-working flexible space, and given obviously what Marcus has just set up and what he's said, I mean, what are you seeing? What are people looking for, and what are the trends that you're seeing specifically? And what are people looking for in a working environment? And specifically in your term, let's talk about the co-working environment.
Okay, Neil, thanks. I think in essence, Neil, what's happened is that co-working is not new to the commercial office space. Co-working and flexible office has been around for quite a few years, and there's a couple of big brands that have come on board and established themselves and a strong footprint, both globally and in various countries. So the principle of co-working and shared office space and sharing resources was always there, and it made a lot of economic sense, particularly for companies that were trying to rationalize their operating expenses. And then we went into 2020, and a lot of companies that had quite a conservative approach to remote working. What happened was we were forced to now adopt a co-work or a remote working strategy. You know, people had always thought about it, spoken about it, they might have dipped their toe in it, but not really implemented it. And along comes 2020, we're all forced to do it. And people are then realizing that you can be as efficient, you can be as productive, but there are obvious challenges from working from home. So, you know, our whole motto is not really so much in terms of adopting this hybrid working model. It's not so much working from home, but being able to work from anywhere. And that's the new acronym, is that you have challenges when you work from home, because it's difficult to be, particularly if you want to be client facing, or you have to have a contact meeting with the client. But you also have challenges with stable power supply, and as a result, stable internet supply. And then there are additional things that the office provides, other than the corporate culture, but the practical things, like being able to access a printer and a scanner, being able to book a boardroom, those kind of things. So what we've noticed is that all of a sudden, a lot of companies are reassessing their commercial leases and their requirement for space. And to Marco's point, is in terms of a place being a space that enables, that's exactly what we seek to do. Is we understand that people will be working, adopting a bit more of a hybrid approach. Some of them will be working from home some of the days, but they will need to access an environment where it's a bit more professional, or where they can, where they can access the office amenities. And the thing for us, particularly with co-working and flexible office spaces, taking it to the suburbs allows people to work closer to home, closer to maybe where the kids go to school. So the advantages of that are there's so many sort of knock-on advantages. It reduces commute time, it reduces stress levels, it makes that work-life balance a lot more sort of manageable. People, if I look at Peter and Hein, you know, with those beautiful backgrounds, you know, who wouldn't want to work in those kind of areas and live in those areas? So for us, we're well positioned now to start taking advantage or start welcoming people who are adopting a bit more of a hybrid remote working strategy. And that's part of our strategy, is being able to take our workspaces into the suburban locations and into the smaller cities and towns, because we have a demand, and we're noticing that demand is increasing in the areas where we don't really have a lot of presence.
Yeah, well, that's interesting, because I think, you know, we've got Peter and Hein. They're gonna, you know, we're gonna ask them about what's going on in George and what's going on in Place. So just before I do ask Peter to join us, Alan, do you think that obviously the semigration trend that we see, this move to Zoom towns, we're going to hear about this from Peter and Hein firsthand. Do you think this is driving the hybrid model? You mentioned it. Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. I think that a lot of people would have either had a home outside of the city, and potentially, and the more fortunate would have had a holiday home outside the city. And then when we were, when you're forced to work from home, you'd prefer to work in an environment that has a lifestyle benefit. And we've noticed the demand in terms of the calls. So we track all our leads, we track all the inquiries that we have, and very often, if we don't have an offering in a particular town or suburban location to offer someone, we lose that opportunity, we lose that lead to location. And we've noticed such an increase of inquiries from the places like, and I list them all the way from Hermanus to George to Plettenberg Bay to Knysna to even the suburban locations around Johannesburg. People who live in the south of Johannesburg or on the East Rand don't necessarily want to travel into Sandton to have to do work when they can work as efficiently from an office or from their home in Benoni. So definitely noticed a big move from a semigration point of view, fueling our demand.
Okay, fantastic. So that brings you in, Peter, because we had a discussion obviously offline, and you shared that you run a big operation out in George, both residential and commercial business, and you yourself actually semigrated through to George, being there a number of years, but now this trend seems to have taken off. Do you want to tell us, what's actually happening there in terms of sales, and what do you think is driving it?
Well, yes, Neil, I think if we have a look, I think I will start with what is driving people. It is all about a better lifestyle. We've seen it in the past, and that is the feedback that we receive from our clients as well, is that they want to migrate to the area because of what the area can give them as such. But, it's always about past experiences of people. I always say, you have a look at different generations, and the current generation will experience certain frameworks, and they don't want to make the same mistakes as the previous generation. So they adapt. And what we now see is people is much more looking into an area where they can see work is important, money generation is important, but life balance is important as well. My children is important. And I think the focus is more moving towards the family, where in the past, our generation was mostly having a look at we need to generate huge amounts to make sure that our children is getting education, and so it's all about the workplace, the environment there, and so on. But that has changed now, and like Marco said, COVID brought it closer to us in that sense. But the area of a garden route, George, was always established as a retirement area where you will spend your last days. But that has changed totally. Currently, our buyers is in the age group of between 35 and 45. And they commute, the wife with the children is staying in George. And then our airport, especially if you go and have a look there on a Sunday afternoon, you will be astounded at how many people is moving or flying up to Joburg and then on a Friday back, and so on. So they move up and down, and business functions is still there. But now after COVID, that has changed as well, because now with all the technology and all the functions around that, people can actually fly less in and out. But still be part of their workspace environment, still be part of that I would say, income generating activities in the metros. Where in the past, when we relocated to George, the question was always, I can't earn an income similar to the income I've generated in Johannesburg. But now that has changed, because you're not reliant on the current economic climate in the area of the garden route. So that is one thing. So yeah, in terms of a local economic front, that has brought tremendous new skills, empowering people, new jobs, and that has uplifted the area in a great way. So what we've seen is that your sectors like financial areas, insurance, all those kind of guys who is actually more reliant on technology is moving easily to the area than other people. And we see that all the migration is all over all the different income groups. It's not just a specific financial group that is moving to George. So yeah, we if we have a look at the total sales in the area of, I think it's about 2012, in those days, it's not that long back, our total sales in a year recorded in the Deeds office in my license area was about below R1 billion a year. Currently, we've moved in 2017, we moved over R2 billion worth of sales in the area. And so on. And when COVID came, we didn't know what to expect for the future, and so on. But we are very surprised. Actually, currently we've seen sale. Well, the stats I took yesterday, for the last year is about 1.8 billion rands worth of sales, even with COVID. So so we can't complain from our side. But what we've seen is that because of the demand, prices of properties has escalated, rentals has escalated. Now, that is good in another sense as well, because especially on the rental side, because previously buy-to-let investors wasn't so much interested in the area because it was cheaper to rent than to purchase a property. But now we're earning good return on income there. And so for the buy-to-let investor, that's a new opportunity that came into the garden route as well.
Wonderful. That's a great way of setting the scene there, Peter. And I mean, you were telling me you were doing record sales. I mean, and so there's absolutely people have got into and bought into this lifestyle thing. I mean, what kind of sales are you talking about versus, say, 2 years ago? I mean, you're up, I think it was 57% or something.
Yeah, if we have a look now, actually, if we have a look at the whole group as such, March 2021 was a record month in 57 years for the whole group. For us in George as well, March was our best month since 2012 when we purchased the Steve George license. So absolutely, it is astonishing. But together with that, I think a lot of other things plays a role, like interest rates is more favorable. And so on. So yeah, and like I said, what's very interesting is that younger generations of people is moving into property more on a than rather buying and renting. That's the main thing currently. So yeah, so we'll have a look at the future.
Wonderful. Great stuff. Thanks very much, Peter. Hein, what's happening in Plet? Because I mean, is it similar kind of trends over there? I know you have also had a boom in the last few months as well. Do you want to share us? What's going on over there? What's driving the market? What's getting people excited?
Thanks, Neil. Yeah, I can basically affirm what Peter is saying. Sales really picked up for us after the hard lockdown. And in our group, I've got some stats. So the garden route year to date compared to last year is up 56%. That's within the Sotheby's group. But then if I look at Johannesburg, it's -10. So that's giving you the indication of what's happening. Half of Johannesburg is moving to the garden route. And that's what we've seen. And previously Plet wasn't as much as a destination for guys living down here and commuting to Joburg, just because the Plet airport had limited capacity. George was more favorable. So what I'm seeing is that the guys who before were commuting on a Monday and flying back on a Thursday, they're commuting once a month now. So they are basically working from here. And I think that's the attraction, because before, if you were commuting, it was quite disruptive to your family. You didn't see your family for most of the week. You then got home on a weekend, and and spend all your time with your family, and Monday back again. And now people are able actually to have their family and work down here and only go up to Johannesburg, once a month possibly. So that's made a big difference. I can tell by the local private school that's been open for about 2 years, they've suddenly got a waiting list of 170 pupils to get into that school. All the schools along the Garden Route have seen huge increases. So these are also young people moving, and not just retired people who have a means to now say, okay, well, let's get down to the Garden Route maybe 5 years before we planned. So yeah, sales have been very good. We've had a couple of record months. And I'll give you an idea. 2 weeks after lockdown, I had a property sale for 44 million. I had the property already on my books for 2 years, and we were battling to find a buyer, and there were 3 offers in that same week on the same property, and it sold for the full price. And I thought, well, this is an anomaly. This is not normal, and the phones just didn't stop ringing. So for us, it was a record year, and year to date has been exceptional. We've probably done about 75% of 2020's turnover by the end of March. So yeah, things are looking good.
So Hein, just in terms of the need from a lot of the buyers out there in Plate, and I think it's a question for you as Peter. I mean, people, are they looking for bigger space, which with a home office environment? Because that seems to be a trend as well. People do want a place where they can sit at home and operate remotely. Is that also, do you see that happening?
Yeah, most definitely. So, first and foremost, still, because 35% of our buyers come out of Gauteng, but first and foremost for them is security, moving down here. So the sort of gated estates, which historically not necessarily been holiday homes, have seen a big increase in demand. But this study/workroom/studio has now become a very important aspect. So if you have something like that and you do your listing and your wording properly, then suddenly that property gets a lot more attention. So clearly people have got the idea of saying, be able to work from home. We have also got some of these shared space operators that have opened up, a little coffee shop with an internet cafe with a small boardroom. There's one just down the road here from my house that's opened up. And that's the telltale signs of what's actually happening at the moment. So, and I agree, people want to work from home, but I think you also need to be able to go to a space which is slightly more professional, and also have some other facilities that you may not have at home.
Excellent, that's great. I think that scene was set very nicely. Thank you very much there, Hein. Marco, I'm going to bring you back in here, and you alluded it to the start. I mean, first of all, maybe you can give me your views on. Do you agree with this whole? I mean, clearly we can see that from the results that Peter's been saying and Hein has been saying, and the demand from Alan, that there is definitely a demand in sort of smaller towns, in Zoom towns. But maybe you can also just maybe comment on that firstly. And then secondly, you mentioned, how can asset owners, now we're talking the owners specifically of the big offices, and I think you alluded it to a little bit earlier, how can they now derive monetary and strategic value from those properties? Maybe you want to comment on those two?
Perfect. So yeah, I think what we're noticing in the comments of Hein and Peter is certainly something of a global phenomenon. And it's interesting because I do see it as something that does represent a new norm. We'll never go back to the 9 to 5. We'll never go back to the days of commuting on a Monday morning, what we were used to. So I recognize that that is a shifted reality. However, I don't think 1 year can rewrite history just like that. So I do see a correction coming. And when we look internationally at the trends of move to suburbs, of the growing and escalated activity in residential real estate, it comes on the back of a number of key factors. First of all, employers had no idea how to weather the storm, so they basically said to their employees, go out and figure it out for yourselves, and we'll be here when you're ready. And secondly, when lockdowns were enforced around the world, all of a sudden, people found themselves cash flush. We weren't spending on going to movies and restaurants and entertainment, etc. And our money was growing in our pockets. People had nest eggs that they didn't have before. People went buying new cars. And this meant now they had the opportunity to put a deposit that they didn't 1 year ago. And this has resulted in a frenzy in the real estate sector. People were buying that property that they felt might have been a little bit out of reach before. that is certainly understandable. But when in the work that I'm doing now, where we're assisting major corporates and businesses, everyone from tenants that occupy buildings to those that actually own the buildings, we're seeing that the drive right now is employers want to take back greater control. It's understood that the one-year experiment has been interesting, but there have certainly been recognitions around the world that the work-from-home experiment is often turned into a failed experiment. And the bottom lines of businesses are suffering because the controls around how their employees are actually conducting themselves is a telling sign. Work from home has quantifiably proven itself to be detracting from the ability to collaborate better. Productivity is actually down, even though we're working longer hours. Work from home has in a lot of ways been turned into, work from home has been turned into live at work, where people are working longer, they can't detach, they can't unplug, stress levels are through the roof, and psychological impact is actually being seen as the new pandemic in 2021. And it only took 1 year to get there. So there is a correction coming. Now, that being said, we're not going to go back to the way things were. But don't expect that 2020 to 2021 is going to play out as the foreseeable norm going forward. In fact, even look at Wall Street, where Goldman Sachs said in July of this year, they will mandate that all of their employees have to come back to the office. And 70% of respondents in a new survey in the US have indicated that employees, those of us that have now found ourselves working in our home offices, actually want to go back because we need to connect with our employers. We need to be visible to those that are offering promotions. We need to collaborate with our colleagues. So a shift is coming. So just be mindful of that is what I would say when thinking about trends in real estate, because the future is not a free-for-all. Rules are going to be put in effect, and we call it flexibility within a framework. And every single client that we're talking to right now is now searching for the ways and means to do that. And this is going to have an impact on the thousands of employees that have now gotten themselves very comfortable in working from the dining room or in the office. We are now still accountable to our employers. And the 20% or 30% drop in some instances of profitability to drop in productivity is actually going to now come back with a bit of a reckoning. But on that basis, we can't just say come back to the office because things will be better, because the office is fundamentally changed. And in talking about how the asset owner or those that are landlords that actually control square meterage, the fundamental reality is that every single business that we're talking to is actually shrinking in size, on average about 50%. So if we were taking 1,000 square meters before, we only need 700 in today's truest sense of the word, because my day-to-day as an employee is I only need to be there maybe 2 hours of the day to do the work I need to do in that location. Therefore, we could effectively come down with our desk count by 50%. And that is a real tangible impact on the bottom line of landlords, because the business model to date has always been 1 square meter equals 1 rand in my pocket. But now that the square meterage is dropping, landlords are being faced with the fact that they need to become participatory in the tenant's request to actually reduce their footprint. So if the square meterage is coming down, is it something we need to resist against? Because the 10-year leases are now fast disappearing as a favorable model. In actual fact, we're seeing a lot of landlords saying, well, okay, it's a new reality. We need to be mindful that we either can help our tenants become more best fit in the space they have, or risk losing them. So rather think about loyalty and tenant stickiness and help them shape what a best fit environment looks like. And then think about what we can do with the 700 square meters they're left with in order to render new services that we can monetize. So this is an important point to make. We're looking at real estate as a service now, as a new business model for the future, whereby it's not about the square meterage that we monetize, but it's about what the space can actually offer to our tenants by providing services that make their day-to-day better. So I will pay an extra service to be in an environment that means I can produce more. And that means then that the landlord has a share in the value proposition of that space. And we're seeing this as an exploding model around the world, whereby we can actually unitize and productize these specific services that are rendered through the infrastructure. So the building can be recognized then as a digital platform. And if I, for example, want a coffee brought just the way I like it to my location, wherever I'm sitting, no matter where I am, that is a service that the building can render to me at a price. So I'm only paying for it when I use it. But when you're looking at these little microtransactions, they actually result in a tremendous amount of bottom line benefits to landlords that have made this leap, in the sense that we see in the extreme case, a landlord took what they were earning in revenue in the States, took what they were earning in revenue, with that revenue from square meterage, which represented 98% of their bottom line, The revenue for square meters stayed the same, but by adding digital services on top of it, the revenue that that accounted for 98% of revenue actually became then only responsible for 40% of our diversified revenue. And the rest of it was actually accommodated for in subscriptions and digital services and rights management. So the business model has changed, and when the real estate companies now need to think about what they're doing in the same way the technology companies are offering services. So we used to buy MS Word on Microsoft Word on the CD and plug it in, and we were good to go. Think about that as having a building. Now what we're doing, we're subscribing to Microsoft Word as a service and paying for only the features that we use when we use them, and that has now turned Microsoft from here to here in terms of a valuable company.
Okay, there's quite a lot that you've added in there, and I think you've given us all food for thought there, Marco, because you've probably thrown a little bit of a cat amongst pigeons there. And I think I would like to bring in Alan over here because there's a correction coming. So, maybe you'd like to probably comment on that, Alan, but maybe what is in your view, and it's a question actually we got from the audience already that I'm going to throw in as part of that. And it's really what Marco was talking about. What do you think will be the future for CBDs and commercial hubs regarding office space? Marco says there's a correction. I don't know. Do you want to maybe first comment on him and then just in terms of that for the future of CBDs and commercial office space?
Sure, Neil. I do subscribe to what Marco said, and I do think that it talks positively to what we're trying to achieve, because there was always this talk when we went into sort of pandemic in 2020 that the office is dead, which couldn't be more further from the truth. You know, what's happening is the office is evolving, and the commercial real estate landlord or owner, property owner, has to now evolve with what the demand is, and has to understand that there's there has to be a shift in the proposition that they put out to the market. So one of the most obvious ones, and Marco did mention it, is shortening lease terms. A lot of landlords are considering that now. You know, 10 years used to be the norm, then it went to 5 years with an option to renew, and now people are talking 3 years. They may even be talking less. But it's also, you know, it shouldn't be a move that's made out of desperation. I think what they need to understand is what is the office occupier looking for, and in that being able to adapt the model to be able to offer that. So adding those services, adding the flexibility, the efficiency, and all those non-office related synergies that you could generate revenue from. So I think that, and that's exactly what we seek to do. Is we want to be able to, we acknowledge that the big occupiers will still have need for an office space, maybe not as frequently, but what they will need is they'll need that professional work environment, but maybe in a suburban location closer to where they live. And the hub and spoke model that Marco was talking about is, so I'll only go into the head office once a month, maybe. So if I have to fly from George to Joburg, I only have to do it once a month. Or if I have to travel from Hermanus to Cape Town, I only have to do it once a month. The rest of the time, I can work from a professional office environment, but closer to where I live. So it's something that we're acutely aware of, and we want to provide to landlords that solution. So forget about the 1,000 square meters or the 4,000 square meters that you're looking for a conventional lease on. What we can do is we can cut it up into smaller spaces, offer a lot more flexibility, and be able to generate as much, if not more, revenue, because we're adding value to the space.
Excellent. Now, this is where I'm going to bring in Peter, because Peter, what's quite interesting from Alan's perspective, some of their biggest demand for co-working flexible environment is actually from the George area, and it seems to be underserved. Now, I know you also look after, you know, a commercial portfolio as well, and as well as the residential. I mean, Would you kind of agree with that? Do you think that there is a kind of an opportunity? Because clearly there's a lot of people that have moved into that city, and at some stage they will need some kind of formal or access to some kind of formal environment. What are your thoughts around that?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with Alan on that. The main thing is in the past, in specific in the George area, we didn't care about renting large spaces, so we didn't work it out per square meter. I would rent a property for, say, 20,000 rand, and then at the end of the day, even if I don't utilize the full area, I didn't care about that. I paid for the whole area. But now those kind of things changed. What we see people is doing is that, or businesses is doing is they say, all right, okay, what do I need? Because even in my own business, in my own office, we've seen it. I had, I think it was about 500 square meters under roof. We've changed offices now, and we are only about 100 square meters because that is what I need. And that is what is changing at the end of the day, is that there is still a place for your office, because like Alan said, you need your printers, you need your systems there, and on the one side. But on the other hand is people would like, I think, best of both worlds. Not just an office, they would like some other areas to work as well, and that would be the difference. And what we've seen is with the guys who is early on the track are buying up commercial buildings and starting to renovate them, change them already into smaller units that they rent out, instead of there's one large property that is utilized by one tenant.
Okay, great. So that's so you definitely are seeing those trends. That's interesting. And Hein, what's happening down in Plettenberg Bay? Is there any sort of demand you're seeing on the commercial side? Is there any similarity to what's happening out there in George in Plet?
Yeah, I think so, Neil. I think it's probably early days for us in Plet with regard to seeing these communal spaces, being set up. As I mentioned, there's one just down the road that's open up. It's like a coffee bar, but it's got 2 little boardrooms, and there's some facilities that you can make use of. There was actually one in Knysna about 2 years ago, the Directors Club, and I think they were just a little bit too early, and it was a really nice setup. So yeah, I do think, and as people are moving down here and starting to live in their homes, working from home all the time is also not ideal. I think you want to get out and get to a space. Even if it's a communal space, you're going to find some other people that you're going to meet there probably every time you go there. So there's some connection. And I think that's one of the things that we also realized is in lockdown, one of the things you longed for was connection with other people, not just on the Zoom call, which is what we did. You want to sit face to face as well. So yeah, definitely. There are a lot of people who are moving here, and I suspect that the demand for sort of shared office spaces will be high on the agenda.
Great stuff. Thanks, Hein. Okay, Marco, coming back to you, we're going to get to a lot of the questions because the questions are starting to flow in quite nicely. And it's one specifically directed for you, Marco. It's from Peter Noordman, and he said, COVID accelerated remote and agility working. It also changed the way people behave towards other people, i.e. social distancing. Now, with your background in architecture, do you think that people expect a different working environment compared to before COVID when going to their offices, and how would management react on this? Your thoughts around that?
Absolutely. The interesting trend that we're seeing is, I spoke earlier about 70% of respondents said they would like to come back to the office in something of a hybrid manner. So spend 2 or 3 days at the office a week. But they're not doing that because there's still a high level of anxiety. So the desire is there, but the practical implications of whether or not the space is actually set up to support that and offer that sense of peace is currently not in place. And that's because the offices today are just currently not set up to deal with our expectations or our evolved expectations. So spatial designs, the ability to create a sense of security, to know that the systems are in place to protect, to have visibility over the environment in terms of understanding whether or not certain areas are more or less occupied before I move into them. These are new realities that you're going to see are going to be manifest in both the physical design as well as the ability of the building to be smart and intelligent and deliver information to people before they arrive and even when they're in the building. So for example, in our HQ in Waterfall, we've fitted it out. We did this actually prior to the pandemic because we just knew that it would be important for us to understand the spaces we use. But we've got an entire system of occupancy detection that allows us to get a feel for which spaces are above or below certain acceptable thresholds in terms of spatial density. So I know if I want to go to the office that it's safe to do so. This then brings down my anxiety level, being more inclined to want to go there. So access to information is the first and most important hurdle that we need to get across to allow for employee engagement. That's the psychological barrier. Then once I'm there, the physical space obviously needs to be reconsidered because open plan only existed as a concept. It was conceived over 100 years ago because we wanted to pack more people into as little space as possible. Right? That was a trick of the tenant. But now that we've got mandates in terms of space between people, the air change rates, etc., the concept of open plan is different. Barriers are going to need to be erected. We're going to look at more biophilic architecture with introduction of greenery, and also the understanding that a space needs to be specifically catered towards the type of work I need to do. So more and more businesses today are reporting that the value or the majority of their productivity and the majority of their profit is actually generated through work that is collaborative, right? Which means we need to get a number of people into one space, in inverted commas, at the same time in order to produce a result. That's where design thinking is, where innovation comes out of. And more and more businesses are moving in that direction. The idea of sitting at my desk and staring on my screen only accounts for a fraction of my day-to-day in my own job as well. I need to engage. So the spaces are now evolving to become more collaborative focused, but doing so in a way that is done safely. So you're seeing introduction of smart whiteboards, and seeing introduction of spaces that are specifically curtailed and zoned to allow for that type of interaction. Because it's important that space is designed around activity and space is designed around output. It's not about space for space sake. I don't think that there's an answer right now, but the one thing that is certain is that the trend that defined real estate and office design in particular was one of set and forget. Put in the furniture, erect the partitions, and assume that everything's going to be okay for the next 5 years while the lease runs out. But in actual fact, the move to adaptability and flexibility is so important, so that if I want to, for example, collaborate today, focus tomorrow, and workshop the day after, that I know that the space is actually configurable to allow me to A, know that that space is available, B, to connect with the people that I know I need to connect with when I need to do so, and C, be reconfigurable to a changing real estate strategy. So adaptability is the new norm, rather than designing for the day one. You need to think about the day 100, and you can only be adaptable if the building itself is capable of generating information and diagnostics about how it's being used so that we can shift future trends preemptively and predictably. So no clear answer right now other than let's make sure to think of our buildings as systems that are intelligent and thinking, and that will enable us to proactively adjust as opposed to be on the back foot and constantly trying to chase the trends, meaning that our spaces are no longer going to be best fit and therefore reducing the value proposition to the employees to want to go back.
Excellent. There's quite a lot there and to take in. And I think, Alan, just from your perspective, Marco was talking about, the whole spatial element of offices and designs, etc. But I would assume that from your perspective, you considered that into your planning as well. So I'm going to ask you a double-edged sword question on that. Do you, in terms of how you would handle your particular spacing for your model? And then there was a specific question which was asked, and it's directed at you, Alan. So that's the second part of the question. The first part is the spacing and how you handle that. The second part is I've heard all these buzzwords about the future of the office, like hybrid models, flexible working spaces, and virtual offices. And are these all names for the same office model, or do they mean different things? So I don't know which one you want to do. I think the two are related.
Yeah, absolutely, Neil. They are related, but I think that hybrid working really refers to that combination of being able to work from home and then work from another more sort of formal office location. Flexible working really talks about more about working or using the space that you need when you need it. So if I don't need a boardroom, I'm not going to rent a boardroom on a conventional lease. If I want a boardroom for an hour, I'll pay for it for an hour. So that gives you that flexibility, and also flexibility in terms of the length of the lease. So I think they all, and then co-working talks about what Marco was talking about is that you could have an area which is sort of, in inverted commas, open plan, and people sort of work, or almost hot desk in a common area. So that leads on to the first question, is that we're very cognizant of being able to follow the correct guidelines and the protocols in terms of social distancing. And our co-working spaces are the ones that have been affected by that. So what's happened is our co-working spaces, we've had to separate further, or have proper remove seats and put placards on desks so that people sit far enough away from each other. But the notion of co-working or sort of hot desking, and that is great. It's a romantic idea, but at the end of the day, when you want to put, or you want to leave the office and sort of cut off, you need to put your documents somewhere. You might have a picture on your desk or whatever, and have to pack that up every day and then leave is not always the most practical. So we found that the demand is certainly still for office space, albeit smaller office space. But then they also only use the service, or they share the services. So they would share a receptionist, they would share a printer, they would share a boardroom, and only pay for those services when they need them. But the offices, I will always need the office, and I'll need a place to lock my stuff up in. And I want that that privacy and that confidentiality in being able to make a phone call, and which is not necessarily something that you'd be able to do in a co-working area. But we have the co-working, and the co-working concept is driven primarily with the sort of the millennial generation, who quite happy to sort of work in a place where there's a buzz. They've got their headphones on and there's activity, and that's what fuels their sort of work ethic but not everyone's can do that. Some people like the privacy. So we embrace all of those buzzwords, but at the same time, we are also very cognizant of social distancing protocols.
Excellent. Great. So that brings to a question to Peter and Hein. And maybe you want to comment on this. And it's a general question that I've got from the audience here. And they say, from some recent information received, they found that many upper-end residential sales were driven by semigration. Maybe do you agree with that? And I'm sure yes, but I think maybe you can comment on that. And then secondly, do you have any information, that's actually what Alan was alluding to, any information about the most popular destinations for digital nomads, who I will also put in as new millennials as well. And digital nomads, obviously, people that can work from their laptop anywhere on the planet. And and what are the reasons for their popularity? Is it lifestyle, taxes, etc.? I don't know. Peter, do you want to comment on that? And hi, Peter, you first.
Yes. In terms of, residential property or buying property there, I would say it is driven by the market that would like to, I would say, in the upmarket areas, getting into a safe environment as such. But at the end of the day, it all depends on personal preference, because we've got different personalities. And if I can go back a little bit in terms of what we've had the discussion now on, is that we are all human beings. and we need social action, interaction as well, and so on. And I think a lot of the social interaction we've seen in the workplace as such is very important. But on the other hand, we can't just work on the office as such, because in the past what we've done is we actually measure productivity of people coming in from 8 to 5, and they will sit there for the whole day. And then things changed and we started to working on flexi time. But now, like you said, now we are looking at people that is nomadic, that want to work everywhere, wherever they can. So, but it differs from sectors to sectors. It depends on their current situation and what they wanted to do.
Great. And Hein, you mentioned there was that coffee shop with the boardroom facility, sort of a very small version of what the IWG would offer. Probably, I think Adam would say it's due for an upgrade. But yeah, what are you seeing? And just in terms of that, is it? Do you have any info on the digital nomads and new millennials, and the reason for the popularity for that kind of space? Your thoughts?
Yeah, so I do think some of the upmarket sales that have taken place, going 10 million plus, are definitely people who've been given freedom, being a CEO or a high up in corporate, that he doesn't have to be in the office every day anymore, and hence he can relocate his family. He'll work from home in his space there and travel when need be. So that definitely has driven propped the market up a bit in the upper end. I met a huge amount of people last year, youngsters from America that were out in South Africa on a short holiday, got stuck here. They were all working from their laptops. They said, no, the guys back at the head office are happy. We don't need to come in. So we're just actually going to stay here for as long as we can. So there are definitely quite a lot of them around. I don't know how the preference works for it. I think those kind of nomads, the kind of stuff they would look at is, in terms of tax residency, how long can I spend in countries before I become a tax resident, etc., etc. But they're people who chase the lifestyle, and they found a means to be able to live their, call it, dream life without being tied down to one particular place. Quite different to selling property in Plett.
Absolutely. Okay, so Marco, I'm going to bring in you as a question. It's specifically for you. They've asked you to comment. Marco, would you say it would be fair to say that you'll be over 100% of your staff spending 70% of their working time at the office? Thoughts around that?
Difficult to ring fence it, because it again depends on the business and the type of work that's being done. If current models or projections are to be believed, then it's seen that somewhere between 50 and 60% of traditional employees' time would be spent in the office compared to not in the office. 70% have indicated an interest to go back to a hybrid, or to go to a hybrid model, in which case 2 to 3 days would be spent at the office, with the remaining saying it's a kind of a split between I want to go back to the office full time versus I never want to go back. But again, it depends very much on the type of work they're doing. So it's not as clean cut as that. Every business is going to need to really delve into what work happens where. And in fact, some cases, some work is mandated to happen in the office. For example, some call centers. Look, I think hybrid as a term, which refers to part in the office and part out of the office, is important. But also hybrid isn't just about location, it's about method of work. So there's a lot of ways to unpack these buzzwords. All I can say is that, do expect that reduction of footprint is here to stay. I think 30% is a good way to start thinking about what traditional leases are going to look like to your tenants of the future. I think we're just going to have to keep an eye on this, but there's no set formula. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Because maybe there's got to be a different trend between what's happening for bigger corporate demand versus smaller business. Surely there's a dividing line. Yeah,
absolutely. I would say the individual or those smaller businesses or the entrepreneurs, what does the office mean to them, really? But your corporates, your more established businesses, those that have a mandate and a responsibility to their employees to offer a space that gives them a safe environment, a productive environment, that you'll start to see some changes. But that change can only occur when, to the previous question that was raised, that these spaces are actually updated to be reflective of what this new expectation of their employees is. Yeah, the future of the office is an ever-shifting target, but it's an exciting space. It's reality, and I think real estate has just been so far behind the curve traditionally. It was always coming. It's time to now catch up with the rest of the world.
Alan, do you want to just jump in here in terms of the difference between the entrepreneurs, so smaller business versus corporates? Are you seeing that the demand different in your area, in the co-working space?
Yeah, absolutely, Neil. Traditionally the flexible co-work space was the incubation hub for the small business, the single business owner or entrepreneur that's developing his business, and the small SMEs. But we found now that there's a big drive and a big shift to the big sort of corporate occupiers. We did a deal at the beginning of the year with Ernst & Young, where a lot of their employees have the option to use any of our facilities globally now. So they've adopted that hybrid working model. So that was in excess of 45,000 people. There was we did a massive deal recently in March with the big telecoms company NTT, where 300,000 of their employees are able to use any of our IWG facilities globally. So reducing their conventional footprint and allowing people to work globally. So we find that there's a big shift on the big corporates. They're adopting a more flexible strategy, and that means that there's opportunity for the sort of the flex space office providers to be able to provide an office environment, so still provide the professional office environment, but just closer to where people live.
Great, thanks for that, Alan. And so we're coming towards the bewitching hour. What we're going to do is it's almost coming to the close of the webinar. So I'm going to ask first Peter and Hein just to answer this question, and then I'm going to ask everybody to give their wrap up, your final thoughts, parting shots for the audience out there. But first of all, question for Peter and Hein before we ask you for your wrap up. Do you think, and I'm also opening it up to the rest of the team, if you want to comment on this, please do. Please put up your hand or just come in, switch on your mic. But for Peter and Hein, do you think office and residential markets are going to merge? For instance, will developers consider developing some kind of office setup, perhaps having shared office space on the ground floor of a multi-story development, for tenants staying within the same residential development? And what could that mean for you as the real estate agent that houses a number of agents? Peter, what are your thoughts about that?
It's a mouthful. If I really have a look, if I have a look at the infrastructure of George, I don't foresee that will happen within the next 5 to 10 years. As such, the main thing is what we need to take into consideration is that a lot of the businesses or corporates is in the metros. So the fact that people is moving down to the area, actually they are still working in the metros by just commuting up and down or via satellite. So I would say that we will see more satellite offices currently in our area, where people were working from and utilizing those spaces there. But if I have a look at the infrastructure of George currently, I think it is already a challenge just for the local governments to keep up with the demand for new housing and everything that's going with that. So yeah, that's my feedback on that.
Okay, great. Thanks for that, Peter. And Hein, what's happening in Plet?
Yeah, I think, I mean, this kind of model has been around for a little while. You see apartment complexes that have got a coffee shop, a laundry, a gym, a concierge, like a reception area before. So it's a little bit like a hotel, but it's not an hotel. And I think with regard to having office spaces, those are the kind of, call it value adds that developers will bring to new projects. And I mean, I think it's a great idea if you had a fairly large development where you had a IT room where you could, high-speed internet, printers, that kind of thing, it would be an advantage. So it's something that I think my next project I'm involved in, it would definitely be on the list of things that we'd like to have. And, maybe on a smaller scale at a start, but I would think that the bigger developers and developments would definitely be looking at introducing this because it'll open up a market for them. So yeah, most definitely.
I believe that in Plettenberg Bay, the Ratepayers Association is taking the municipality to court. So there's a bit of tension there, isn't there? I don't know if you're aware of it, but specifically in Plettenberg Bay, I don't know whether you want to comment on it, but it just shows a bit of tension between, I don't know if you got any thoughts around it?
Yeah, it's been going on for a little while, and it's got to do with the municipal manager, and he was fired, and he took them on, and I think they're going to the Constitutional Court now. They spent about 2 million rand on getting him reinstated, and the Ratepayers Association are adamant that they will stop it because he was up previously for financial irregularities, and supposedly he's supposed to be employed again. Yeah, politics is quite tight, and we'll see what the elections hold for us next year.
Exactly. Gentlemen, I think it's been a fantastic discussion. I think it's there's a lot of food for thought. We've shared some fantastic ideas. And so what I'm going to ask everybody, we've got 15 minutes left. So each one of you can do 3 or 4 or 5 minutes, however you would like to do as a wrap up, your final thoughts. And in terms of the subject today, the future of the office, the semigration trends, what your final thoughts are. I think leave our audience with some nice parting shots that they could use, some ideas. And what I also encourage the audience is to engage with our panelists. We do have, if there's any questions or if you would like to consult directly with any of the panelists here, we encourage you to do so. We will pass that information if you allow us to pass that on to the panelists to engage, or vice versa. So I'm going to ask Peter. First, Peter, you give us your wrap-up, your final thoughts, and parting shots for the audience over there.
Yeah, well, on the commercial side, I think it is early days for us. Like I said, if we really have a look at the past in 2004, I would say 2000 to 2008, it was ideal to have a second holiday home in the area. And after the recession, that has changed totally. So a lot of people got rid of their second holiday homes. And now the trend, like I said, the trend started changing, especially from, say, 2014 upwards, of people actually semi-migrating to the area, making a new life, but instead of having a holiday home, come and stay their entire life here, and so on. So that, I think that is one of the main changes there. The main focus on the offices and so on was still, most of them, like I said, commuting up and down and so on. But that has changed. A lot of people is bringing down their skills, bringing new businesses in the area and so on. So for all the small towns in the Garden region, who was actually more reliant on holiday makers to feed the economy, we're not so reliant on the holiday makers anymore. We are, there's enough businesses and people that came in with some skills. So yeah, that is that. Just one last thing I just want to share with you is that in 2019, there was a web post from the Nice Update Herald that said that George is the city with the best quality of life in South Africa, beating Nice now, Port Elizabeth, Cape Town, and Durban. This is according to the Numbeo and International Online Database of Users Submitted Information. The quality of life score is obtained by ratings of a city purchasing power, safety, healthcare, climate, cost of living, traffic, and pollution. So George's overall score is 189 compared with the other cities. So yeah, I think that says it all at the end of the day.
That's wonderful. I mean, Peter, we just hope that you got any stock available. I mean, are there any properties to buy? They've all been snapped up already.
Well, that's the biggest problem currently. You know, stock is always a problem, especially the demand is higher. And yeah, the demand is, you know, have an influence on the prices. You know, even if you have a look on rentals as well as sales, sometimes we can't believe what properties is actually the prices that they reach in the market, you know, because we normally work on historical data and so on. But yeah, we need to have our finger on the pulse every day as things is changing and so on. So yeah, let's see what the future holds.
Fantastic. Thanks, Peter. Thank you for your contribution. Great. It was fantastic having you. Don't disappear yet. For Hein, give us your wrap up. I think you're going to say, hey, man, Pledge is better than George. So and we do have properties for sale. What are your final thoughts there, Hein?
Yeah, well, I think what the COVID did is if you were going to choose a place to come and suffer, that's really not a bad place to choose. Yeah, it's a lovely town. I've lived here virtually all my life, so that's all I know. But a lot of people who come here just say it is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And yeah, we're very fortunate and grateful to be able to live here. We still have some stock. I think prices will go up now. It's inevitable. The demand is definitely outstripping supply. But for the moment, we're still okay. We don't attract as many people as George that are actually going to come and settle and do business necessarily. So I think also we attract people who may be at the end of their careers and have just fast-tracked their retirement plan and getting their ducks in a row. The interest rates for sure have helped, and there seems to be a lot more money in circulation. I don't quite know how that works, but that's what I'm seeing. Thanks very much.
Fantastic. Thanks. Thank you for participating today, and I think it's been a great discussion and great insights over there. Okay, Marco, will you give us your wrap up, your final thoughts, and maybe pull everything together? And I think you've thrown in some interesting concepts there, and I'm glad that everybody doesn't agree all the time, and you've got some different thoughts. We must have some differing views. So yeah, your final thoughts, your wrap up that you could leave everybody with this afternoon.
There's nothing today I haven't disagreed with. Just put a little bit of extra food for thought. But yeah, I think it is an exciting time, and you know, we do have a period of where this current norm is going to continue on its trend for at least another year, I think. But we should take this opportunity now to ready ourselves for this correction that I'm talking about. Take the opportunity to understand what the office needs to become so that it's ready and waiting for when the world opens up again, when people are back out in the streets spending on vending machines and hot dog stands, when we have a remembrance or a semblance of normality and socialization, and when a sense of lack of nervousness is prevalent amongst our employees to want to get back into the office in its new shape and form. The push towards collaborative environments, the push towards driving productivity through shared ideas and through engagement is really where the focus is to be made. So if you're responsible for built environments, think about the infrastructure that would be required to create environments not just that benefit the potential tenant and occupant through location, but as I mentioned before, through the generation of insights and through improved experiences. And then I think you're putting in place a basis for sustainable operations. I think real estate, in my opinion, is going to be the most exciting sector of all in the foreseeable future. There's a lot of opportunity, in fact, too much really to name. Keep an eye on global trends, and certainly let's think about what the building needs to become, not as a product, but as a system. Think about strategies around using data to lead your decision making. And I think we're also going to see a resurgence in the use of IoT in spaces. When I say IoT, Internet of Things, to create spaces that can connect and enable and learn from interactions. So they become, as I mentioned before, a part of the team. One of the terms I use, and maybe stick in your mind, is think about the office as being a place that offers that home field advantage. And if you think about the sports analogy, when a team plays at home, they're twice as likely to win statistically. So that's what businesses are after, is that opportunity to improve their chances for success. So let's enable them to do that by creating environments that offer that place of infrastructural, cultural, and services kind of support and basis. And then I think we'll see a thriving of the market.
Wonderful. Well, that's a great way to wrap up, Marco, and it's nice and positive as well, which real estate is making a comeback, guys. So that's fantastic. Alan, your final thoughts. You got the last words, and you got the last closing thoughts. So do you want to give your final wrap before we exit? Your thoughts?
Yeah, Neil, I think really going back to the topic, the future of the office is promising, although evolving. As I think everyone has said, it's no longer really about its square meters. It's about, sort of space as a service. It's about optimization, efficiencies. It's about being, it's about lifestyle and being closer to where you work and having that sort of that balance. And we're excited to be able to offer a solution to all of that. And I think for us the biggest thing is that a lot of people speak about corporate culture being contained sort of within the bricks and mortar, and so much more now it's not being. It's nurtured there, sure, but I think that that people are still able to maintain a corporate culture and still work remotely and as productively and as efficiently. From our side, we have quite an aggressive strategy, and we really want to get to those areas where Peter and Heinz sit, and we look forward to engaging with potential partners who might either own real estate and be commercial landlords, or might be looking to get into it to say, well, here's an opportunity, and look at flexible workspace in the smaller towns and cities outside of the metros. And been very happy to participate and share insight on this, and thank you to the other panelists as well.
Great stuff. Well, thanks, Alan. I think it's a wonderful way to wrap up. So once again, I'd like to thank the entire panel. I think it's been a fantastic discussion, great insights. Hein Pretorius, and he's head of Sotheby's in Plettenberg Bay, and Peter Jordan, who's the head licensee at CIF in George, and Dr. Marco Magnano, he's the real estate sector leader at Deloitte, and Alan van der Vestaisen is the head of partnership growth at IWG. Gentlemen, thank you all very much. I think it's been a fantastic insight. And to our audience, I'd like to thank you all for joining us and your participation today. We hope that you enjoyed it as well and you got value from these webinars. And from our panelists, I encourage you to engage with all these presenters. Contact them if you'd like to sign up, whether you want to just get some consultation or meeting or whatever that you may do. With your permission, we will send that through. Many of you ask about webinar recordings and replays. And for those attendees who had to perhaps leave early or could not access the webinar, and we've had it because of power outages, etc., or maybe you just missed the live version, you couldn't make it, you had meetings, etc., life was too busy, we will have those recordings accessible for you, either on the REMAG website under shows. You just click on webinars and you can actually view it there at your leisure, or you can go to the REI TV YouTube channel. So any unanswered questions will be published on the Real Estate Investor Digimag and on the REMAG website. And if you have any new questions like answered, we can send it through to the panel, info@remag.co.za. So before you go, I need to give you some very important reminders for future events. Next month, we've got our second 2-day property management masterclass on the property management ecosystem. And this will take place on Wednesday, the 19th of May and Thursday, the 20th of May from 10 to 1 o'clock. It's a 3-hour event for 2 days. Now, just let me know, we had our first one was so popular. We had over 2,000 registrations, over 1,000 people attending. Can you believe it? And for this particular one, next month, we have over 10 speakers and experts on different topics over 2 days. And you can also, if you're an agent, you can receive up to 6 CPD points for attending if you're a property practitioner. And I think that's a very big bonus for you. Also, we haven't got a date yet, but it's coming shortly. It's a reminder about our REI's 3rd annual Digitalization Summit, which we know IWG is one of our key players in that one, key sponsors, and that's going to be a combination of weekly virtual events starting in a series and ending in a full-day summit. And this, I can tell you people, is going to be South Africa's biggest PropTech digitalization of real estate event. And we know that for a fact. The platform itself lends itself to a completely different playground. It will definitely not be on Zoom. A lot of people are zoomed out and got Zoom fatigue. So we say we're bringing you a platform that is going to blow your mind and actually showcase the latest in real estate technology and what's really happening. It'll be a fantastic platform. For this, we're going to let you know only in about a week. We've got all the announcements coming up. If you want to know a little bit more, you can send an email to us, info@remag, but I think watch our space on the Remag website, watch our emails, newsletters, etc. So I'd like to end off with an inspirational quote from Mohammed Al-Arian. He's an ex-CEO, a chief economic advisor at international insurance giant Allianz. And he says, as companies give more attention to the importance of work-life balance, more and more people will be in a better position to decide and act more holistically on what's important to them. And that's in the context of today's subject, the future of the office. And I think it was a fantastic discussion. We'd like to watch a space going forward and have more discussions of this kind, which we certainly will do. Thank you once again for joining the REI Talk webinar today. We look forward to seeing you at our next webinar, our masterclasses, and our 3rd annual Digitalization PropTech Summit. Stay safe and successful investing. This is Neil Peterson of Real Estate Investor signing out.